Hi, it's Laura at Aquamarine 18 Tarot and Books. Thanks for stopping by my channel today. Welcome or welcome back. I am here with a bit of a ramble. I've been thinking about something this morning that I thought would be worth having a chat about, that I'm curious to hear other people's thoughts on. So here I am. I will just mention before I get into this conversation that I'm filming on my phone, which is not what I do normally. But I want to experiment with the possibility of using my phone more for filming for YouTube. So apologies if the audio isn't, quite as good as it usually is. If it doesn't turn out well, this just won't be a thing I do much going forward. But I thought I would give it a try. So I have been thinking this morning about a distinction between what I am thinking of as, on the one hand, what I want to call spontaneous readings, and on the other, I want to talk about as ongoing reading practices. Okay? And this is, maybe not a firm distinction, and I'm probably oversimplifying as binary distinctions tend to do. But what I'm thinking of here is the difference between, on the one hand, spontaneous reading is what I'm thinking of as the kind of reading you do for yourself when you just have a question and you think, okay, I'm going to sit down and read for myself. Or maybe you have a decision to make that you want the cards or whatever system you're using to help you with. Maybe you're working through some kind of complicated feeling, or you want to do some journaling, or whatever it is that is what draws you to reading for yourself. You feel that, and you sit down and you read for yourself in this kind of spontaneous way. Versus what I'm going to call kind of ongoing practice readings, which are things like daily draws, maybe a reading every new moon and full moon, if that's something that you do, a reading that's part of a deck and walk as like an ongoing set of readings that you're working on over a long period of time. Perhaps even something like if you have a particular spread that you use to do a deck interview with every new deck that you get without fail, right? These kind of ongoing practice readings that are part of a broader kind of context of practice, right? Maybe that means that they involve maybe using a similar spread or slightly modified spread repeatedly, or maybe it means you're looking backward and forward to kind of the prior reading you did before you do the next one. But readings that are done in a context of an ongoing practice versus reading spontaneously because you feel like it. And the reason that I've been thinking about this distinction is because I have some time off, and so I've been, at home doing things. And one of the things that I decided to do was to look through my journal where I write down, readings that I do for myself, anything other than my daily draw, which lives in a page a day, Hobonichi cousin. I have just a plain lined notebook that I write all of my other kinds of readings in, and that includes geomancy, tarot, etc. And so what I was doing was I was looking at this journal, my most recent one, and filling in a page at the beginning that I had left blank as a kind of table of contents. And making the table of contents as I'm getting towards the end of this particular notebook, and I'll need to move into a new notebook because I'm going to run out of pages. And as I was looking through the readings that I've done, over the past almost a year, I was struck with the realization that pretty much every reading I have done for myself in the last year has been what I'm calling here a kind of ongoing practice type of a reading. I do a general forecast with geomancy every time the sun changes signs, so it's like a month ahead reading. I do have a daily draw practice. What exactly I'm asking, or what how many cards I draw, that definitely varies, but I have a daily draw practice that's in the morning, every morning. I do readings for myself with the lunar cycle phases to support intention setting and checking in with those intentions throughout any given month. And I also, more spread out, obviously, I have a set of tarot spreads that I designed myself, one for each of our 4 core Druid holidays, the solstices and equinoxes. So I have these different kind of like nested rhythms of reading for myself. The lunar phase readings are obviously much more frequent versus the holiday readings are kind of 4 times a year, obviously. But I was really struck by the fact that I have not been just kind of sitting down spontaneously to read for myself very much. And I'm struck by this in what I want to say is a pretty neutral way. I don't share this with the intention of suggesting that like I wish my practice was different, or that I think that this is a bad thing, or that I think that it's a great thing, or that these kind of different types of readings are better or worse or more or less valuable than the other. Not at all. It just really struck me as being like a very stark pattern in my reading for myself in the past while, and one that has not always been the case. I've been reading for myself for a long time, and I feel like at different times I've read for myself more or less frequently. Sometimes I've had a daily draw practice, sometimes I haven't. Sometimes I've played around with kind of a weekly reading practice. I've often had some kind of lunar phase practice, but it is varied in terms of whether I'm reading for myself just on new moon and full moon versus also on the first quarter and last quarter versus on the kind of intermediary phases in between. So like how many readings in a given lunar cycle I'm actually doing. But I don't know that I've ever been in my own practice kind of leaning so heavily in this one particular direction. And I am working through thinking about why this might be, just with a sense of being curious. And again, not trying to judge myself or my practice in any particular way, just thinking about, why is it that all of my readings for myself are very close to all of it? Not all. It's not 100%, but it's a lot. Why is it that such a high percentage of the readings that I do for myself are in these kind of ongoing practice contexts, and why am I not sitting down and just reading because I feel like it on something that's on my mind? Like, why am I not doing that very often? And I've been trying to figure this out for myself, and I'll continue to try to figure this out, beyond this video. But my tentative suspicions, we'll say, are partly that this probably has to do with just kind of the rhythm of my life more broadly, being that I feel like my schedule right now is a lot more consistent and regular than it has been at other times in my life. I work a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. I, am getting up at the same time every morning, pretty much. Maybe a slight sleeping on the weekends here and there, but really not much. It's 6 a.m. every day, and I have my morning reading. So I feel like some of it is that these routines of reading for myself are really just kind of tied to other aspects of my routine. My daily draw is always just after my sphere of protection, which is a kind of energetic shielding ritual that I have as part of my Druid practice. I am a student of astrology, as folks know. So I feel like with, paying more attention to astrology and aspiring to be more aware of my environment in that very specific way, and aware of kind of the cycles of time in that particular way, that it is perhaps only natural that means that lunar cycle readings are something that I'm doing with a lot of consistency. I have 4 holidays a year, and I've worked these tarot spreads I've designed into my observation of those holidays, so that has become very much a routine. And again, routine presented, neutrally. And I wonder if those practices taken in combination, the moon readings, the sun cycle readings, the holiday readings, the daily draw, which is usually just a couple of cards, really small, is that just kind of my happy place in terms of frequency of reading for myself, such that when I maintain these rhythms, I don't really feel much need to read for myself beyond that, because I'm already reading and journaling with a level of frequency that it just kind of feels like enough, like it feels good. I do think that may be part of it as well. Other than a kind of, like, I will say, very basic daily draw that often just looks like, a card or two for what's going on today and a card or two for how to navigate that. That's kind of my usual daily draw. Beyond that kind of really basic check-in, I've never been one to read for myself daily beyond that. I have never been someone, when I've been, in all my time reading for myself, which is like my adult life pretty much at this point, I've never necessarily been someone who would take every decision that they have to make, or take like every thing that happens to me and turn it into a reading, right? But I have historically done a lot more of these kind of spontaneous readings than I have been lately. And I don't know, I suppose that what I'm going to do is look back at prior journals to figure this out. I don't know how sudden this shift was. I feel like I'm going to suspect that maybe getting really consistent and into the daily draw probably has had something to do with it. But that's just kind of me speculating at this point. I suspect that the shift from being a more spontaneous, when I feel like it, reader for myself, to a more routine, ongoing rhythm reader for myself has probably been more gradual than not. I suspect that the daily draw has something to do with it. So I don't have any kind of conclusion about this. Other than realizing the fact of the thing being what it is, it hasn't led me to any particular conclusions about, my practice or what I want for my practice or anything like that. I just noticed it and thought it was interesting. So I am curious. And you can tell me in the comments below if you feel like sharing. If you read for yourself, which I know many of you here do, would you say that you more so read for yourself in a kind of ongoing practice way, where you have routines around when you do that and for what purpose, and maybe even the spreads that you like to use or things like that? Or are you more of a spontaneous read for yourself when you feel so inclined, when you feel like you might benefit from it, and not really otherwise? Or is it some, balance of the two? Do you find that in the time that you've been someone who reads for yourself that you've kind of oscillated between these ways of doing things or these ways of practicing? I would just love to know. I'm very curious. So yeah, I have no tidy conclusion. I just thought that I would share some thoughts and see, I hope, what some other folks' thoughts are. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you again soon.